Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new live stream. I'm Ariel from Math Figures, and I have Jacob with me on this side. We're going to be talking about driving revenue through engagement and through onboarding today. A topic that's pretty cool. I think not enough people talk about. People talk about paywalls and people talk about ASO, but there's more to it. So I've invited Jacob, who runs a popular blog and talks about this all the time. We're going to be talking about it today. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here with you.
Happy to be here too. Happy to have you on the show. Happy Wednesday to everyone who hopefully it's a Wednesday wherever you are with a pretty diverse crowd. Speaking of a diverse crowd, as always, tell me what's in your cup and where you're from as we wait for people to shuffle in. I'm drinking peppermint tea with actual mint in it, which I can't show the camera because it's weird. What's in your cup, Jacob?
Well, I've started drinking guayasa tea. I'm
Ooh,
not sure you've heard of it.
nope.
It's like similar to yerba mate,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if you ever. I've been exploring different teas, and I tried yerba mate loose leaf tea,
Okay.
and it tastes terrible. Any can you buy of it, like there's tons of sugar, and that's the only way it tastes good. And so I found this other tea that's very similar, has similar caffeine, and
Interesting.
then similar like properties, and I now so I and doesn't taste bad.
Okay.
So now I that's my normal morning tea.
Interesting. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to look into it.
yeah,
I've never tried either. I heard of the first one, but not this one. I've done my fair
yeah,
share of
yeah.
tea
It's
exploration, but I guess not enough.
do you go tea bags or you have a loose leaf tea you brew?
Both. It really depends on the mood and how
Yeah,
much time I have. If I'm really in a pinch,
right.
I'll throw a quick bag in it and just drink it. But if I have time and I want to relax, I have a steeper or I have the actual kettle steeper. Really depends on how invested I am in today's tea.
Yeah, yeah, nice.
Cool. So we have people in Hungary, Uganda. No chat on Twitter. So we're streaming on Twitter, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I think streaming on X is really interesting because there's no easy way to get to it. You kind of have to stumble onto a post, a tweet, a post with it. And then when you click on it, the whole chat opens up, but you never really know it's there. But we are on X, so if you're seeing us on X, click on the video so you can talk to David, who wants to talk to more people on X. Hello, X. A lot of excitement in the chat today. A lot of party people. Well, let's party up. We're going to talk about really exciting stuff today. And right off the bat, we have an ASO question. I think we'll leave ASO for later because we're talking about what to do after ASO is working for you. So I'll try to answer it at the end, Philip, but if we can't get to it, I'll try to answer it in the comments later on after the video is over. Ooh, Virginia is in the house. Orange pomegranate juice. Now that's a good combination. I made that fresh a few days ago. I should do that every morning. I really don't do that enough. But alrighty, we're all here. We're ready to talk about onboarding and about user retention, and we're gonna get started. But before we get started, Jacob, please tell us more about yourself. You can do a much better job than I can.
Sure, yes. I've been working in mobile marketing pretty much my whole career. It's 10, 12 plus years now. And really, really focusing on the retention monetization side, kind of post acquisition of users. How do you keep them and get them to pay you? And so that's been through product marketing, lifecycle marketing, more monetization in terms of like product growth and tests. Worked for a variety of companies over that time. Go look at my LinkedIn if you're curious. I but recently started writing a newsletter retention blog, retention.blog, easy to type in and go find. Check it out if you will listen to me first, and if you like what I have to say, then you can go check it out. But really enjoyed doing that and kind of sharing kind of insights I've learned over the years with everybody. now I also do some kind of consulting and fractional and advisory work as well. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So you keep busy when it comes to app growth and app marketing.
I keep busy. Yeah, yeah. Always something new to write about, working with different clients. Been doing a lot of conferences this year. We were both at APS, but we didn't have a chance to chat
Yep.
there.
That's why we're doing this,
But yeah,
obviously.
exactly. Right, right.
Oh, great. So let's jump right into it. We talk about in your blog, and if you're not reading Jacob's blog, you definitely should. We'll link to it in the description later. I've been reading the blog, and there are a lot of interesting tidbits. You talk about retention, that's the name of the blog, but you also talk about onboarding and engaging users, and really everything you need to do once you have a user in your app. And that's really where the opportunity is. And at APS, the App Promotion Summit, I gave a keynote, and one of my bigger topics in the keynote was that downloads are getting much tougher to get across pretty much all the categories, but revenue is growing at a crazy rate, which means that there's this amazing opportunity if you do know what to do with your downloads to make more money with them. People are spending more. They're just not downloading as much. And that's because there's too much noise, there's too much clutter, and it's still at this point, discovery is not as easy. So if you've been listening to any of my tips about App Store optimization or looking at Apple search ads and optimizing those, that's a word, you will get new users. But then what do you do with them? Because if you don't do everything, every possible thing you can to turn them into a paying user, you're really leaving money on the table. So that's what Jacob is really good at. And the beginning question is, if everything starts with a user that just stumbled into an app, do we need an onboarding, or can we just throw the user into the features and say, here's the app, go enjoy it, and that's it? Easy question, I know.
Yeah. Well, so there's first, I love creating onboardings, and I love that. But it's not actually right for every product.
Hmm.
I think for so there's a few things you want to think about. Different industries and different use cases have um, different kind of timelines to monetization. For example,
Hmm.
like health and fitness apps, most conversions typically happen immediately.
Okay.
You have a very short time window to convert those users. But if you think about more functional products, like maybe a music app, um, a music app has a lot longer window because usually they offer a lot more content for free. You can listen to things. You're going to probably convert over time. Like if you look at, comparing ourselves to big apps isn't always the best, but if you look at Spotify, like most of their conversions happen over time because people get annoyed by listening to all the ads. Um, and so you first, think about like what type of product you have. I think maybe a good kind of decision makers, like are you are you solving more emotional needs with your product, or are you solving more functional needs? Often if you're solving more emotional needs, then I think you should try to convert people early on, and an onboarding flow that sells and motivates people on the product is a great way to do that. uh, if you have a more functional product, like you don't always need an onboarding. People just kind of want to get to the value, get to what you're doing. So if you look at another example, like All Trails does not have a long onboarding. I think they have like one or two screens that has like a list of features and then shows you a paywall. Uh, um, but really they sell their product by letting you explore and actually use it. And so most people probably start using it for free, a decent amount probably, going on a hike, start a trial right then because they want to download a map offline, but they really just want to get to that value. And so um, first, like if you're brand new, kind of creating a new app, well, look at what your competitors do, and similar types of products do. Every industry type of product is different, but that's kind of a good way to start to figure out like what should my early product experience look like.
I think that's such a good point that there are functional products out there that users are downloading to solve a specific problem. And they may not need, I'm imagining they still need something because if you drop a user into a brand new experience, you may not get that immediate understanding of where the features are. And that might lead you down a negative path. Maybe they'll churn kind of immediately, go look for another competitor and be second or third in the list of results if searching on the App Store. Do you think in that case that, so you said emotional and you said fitness, so fitness is more of an emotional decision to upgrade in your experience?
Yeah, why are you going to the gym? Because you feel bad about yourself. You're not happy with how you look. Why do you want to work out? Um, it's uh, going to the gym is more functional, but like
Yeah,
downloading an app to teach you how to work out, it is very emotional
yeah, absolutely.
in terms of how you feel. And so usually you come in with really high intent. Maybe you saw an ad, maybe someone shared something with you online. You come in and you go, yeah. Like in that moment, you're not feeling great. You go, I need a solution. I want to solve
Hmm.
this. And so as a as a developer, you want to capture that kind of energy the user comes in with,
Yeah,
and capture that intent and kind of carry that energy versus losing that energy. So,
yeah.
those are very fluffy words. So, but kind of thinking about one, asking about what their goals are, figuring out what their needs are, and reinforcing that you can meet those needs. So simple questions there can be very valuable to kind of come in and really get users excited about your product to capture that emotion they intent and come in with, and then the common pattern now is medium to longer onboarding flow with a paywall at the end, right? With a trial, and so that's the pretty common pattern a lot of apps use right now.
That's a good segue into my next question. And that is, if you don't have an onboarding, what do you do with a paywall? How do you integrate that into the experience? Do you even need to do that? Or do you want to wait for them to hit some sort of feature they need, they absolutely must need, but is locked?
Well, showing the paywall immediately on the first session and getting as many users as you can to see the paywall usually always means better conversions and more money. Um,
Okay.
like it's very
First
rare that
tip.
it's not the case. Yeah, show the paywall.
Yeah. Show the paywall. We should put
Uh,
that
um,
on the screen.
but you can, there's different philosophies towards kind
Hmm.
of growth and how you want to think about, you know, um, Duolingo. It's easy to talk about big apps because everybody knows them. But Duolingo, does not. Duolingo lets you use a lot of things for free, and then shows paywalls when you try to access locked features. I haven't done the onboarding for Duolingo in a bit. Maybe that's changed, but they really capitalize on their organic word of mouth growth, get people in, focus on building a huge user base with really strong retention, and then monetize those users over time through a variety of tactics. So they have really creative monetization, really strong monetization tactics. Um, and clearly they're successful. But if you are running paid acquisition for your app, um, well, you have a fixed cost to those each new user coming in. You need to convert those users quickly because you need to, otherwise you run out of money. And so you need a faster return. And so if you have better organic acquisition, you often have more flexibility with how you can grow. And so I think there's trade-offs you can think about in terms of do you want more free users in your product, which equals more reviews and ratings, which equals better rankings in the App Store, better App Store optimization, more visibility? Or do you need to focus on monetization because you're trying to build a business and you need to make money here to kind of grow? And so, um, yeah, I think that's a good way to think about that.
That makes I want to say a lot of sense. I think the difference between organic and paid user acquisition has always been a tricky part because it does afford so many new opportunities when you go paid, but it also means you're under the gun in certain respects. But that does make sense. So always show the paywall. Clearly, we're always going to show the paywall. And you said something about mid to long onboarding and then paywall. Do you think paywall, not paywalls, onboardings are getting longer and longer with time?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
Not
think,
even a question.
yeah, I mean, it's super interesting to see. I believe Noom was the first one that kind of pioneered the long onboarding flow.
Hmm.
Um, Noom now has one of the longest onboarding flows. You know, they started out, I think, more as a web product,
Hmm.
but now they pretty much have identical experiences in web and mobile app. I'm not sure, which is larger, but and so I believe Noom really started it, and it's super interesting to see because it goes against what was um, commonly held beliefs in growth teams, startup teams. Remove friction,
Hmm.
eliminate screens,
Yep.
less. Get them into the product faster, faster. And I think generally like removing friction is good. I think before like a lot of products used to have really bad experiences and used to be really frustrating. You used to have
Hmm.
so many forms but so I think when the experience is poor in terms of onboarding, yes, remove poor experiences clearly.
Hmm.
But this trend of long onboarding flows, I think, goes with the trial and subscriptions.
Hmm.
I think that your onboarding great. Onboarding does a lot of things, but in terms of it really works well with it's essential for paid acquisition,
Hmm.
having a good onboarding flow because you need someone to convert quickly. And
Yeah.
you need to get that trial start. And for a lot of subscription apps, 60, 70, 80% of trial starts will happen on the first session. And so you really need to make the most of that. And I think that's kind of the underlying reason why these long onboarding flows have really grown. I think also we live in a copycat world, right? We see one big app doing it and we go, okay, that's the way. And so I think a lot of it is based on that as well, but they also work. So you by there's a few kind of psychology principles, tactics, whatever you want to call them, at play. One is this kind of sunk cost fallacy,
Hmm.
where if you just spent 5 minutes going through an onboarding flow, well, if I just spent that whole much time going through that flow and then I stop now, like what did I just spend all that time for? So it's kind of this
Yep.
cognitive dissonance where if I did this, then clearly there's something interesting, and then so you start the trial. And so there's a lot of apps use a lot of different kind of heuristics and biases in their onboarding flow, but I think probably just the time investment is one of the largest factors at play, I think. And so it's not just time, it's making it a fun, interesting, engaging experience that adds value while also keeping people going through your onboarding flow. And so it's not a simple task, but I think if you do it well, can be really effective.
And we're starting to now to talk about actual onboarding flows, and length obviously plays a big role in that. Do you see any, and you've looked at many onboardings, do you see common patterns of mistakes that people make in general? Maybe it's too short of an onboarding, too long of an onboarding, that are repeating again and again, that might be good to stop.
I don't think too long or too short. I think it's too boring. Um,
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So because we see onboarding flows that have 5 screens, 10 screens, and convert really well. We see Noom has 80 screens. I think Flow has 60
Wow.
something screens.
In a single onboarding.
Yeah.
Oh wow. 60 screens.
Yeah.
That's
go through it, or I have it. I did a post on it. That's how I know. I did a post on it. And I captured all of them and counted all of them, and so they use all these different tactics and kind of all combined into one. And they didn't start this large.
Hmm.
They slowly grew and found like, okay, tested, okay, this works, and actually increases conversion. And so, they do things like they have like quizzes, built in where it's like a behavioral personality quiz in like the middle of onboarding. And it's like, okay, here's your behavioral profile. And based on and so but like that builds more buy-in, but it also does something interesting in you're offering value. So that's the kind of consistent theme of great
Hmm.
onboardings is you're continuing to offer value throughout the onboarding. And I think that's what you want to focus on. And yeah, I think that's, value is a bit vague, but continue to think about different ways you can give back to somebody during that onboarding flow.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a question from the audience that I think is a good one. Let me bring it up on the screen. Ignacio is asking, hi, I'd love to know about the general tone of an onboarding. Should I be familiar with the user? Should I be worried to not sound as if I'm praying into their lives? Prying into their lives? One of those two. I run a micro-learning app. So that's a good question. That's something that I don't hear often. What does a good onboarding sound like? And I think I know the
Well,
answer.
yeah, the answer to everything, it depends. But really, so if you have a learning product, educational product, I would say a simple like sound like a teacher. Like
I
I
like
think you
that.
can
I think it's a good
often
one.
go back to real world examples because you want people have expectations for things to have sound, and where do their expectations come from? Like their past, their real world experiences. And so think about, okay, well, what do people expect? And you know, mimic that to start. Now, tone and brand voice are often underutilized differentiators. You can really make your product stand out by taking on a different tone than expected. So it's kind of like this pattern interrupt.
Hmm.
People expect one thing and they get another, and they either like it or they don't like it. So your goal is to make them like it. And so like if if you have a specific point of view on a subject, if your product takes a certain opinion that's different from other products out there, think about how you could also make that tone match your opinion or your take
Hmm.
on that product. And so I think you want to, and often for founders, like it kind of comes from their voice a little bit a lot of the times, because it's kind of coming, that product is coming out of them and their experiences. And so sometimes that tone mimics them. Sometimes you purposefully take a original tone to add more value, to differentiate, to stand out.
Hmm.
And I think that can actually be a really great tactic, but to kind of create more emotional connection with your users. And so don't be afraid of being different there. And if anything, I would get creative, really, with how you think about that.
And I think to an extent, it really means know your user. So you said something that makes a lot of sense, sound like a teacher. If you're a micro learning app, that's kind of the expectation we all have that if we're learning, we want to learn from someone who's authoritative, who has that sort of feel to them. And I think that carries across pretty much every single onboarding. If the app is a companion, talk to the companion. If an app is something a little bit more serious or a business app, talk to them in the way they want to hear. I do also like the idea of talking to them in the way they don't expect to hear, as long as it's tasteful and kind of makes sense so they know that it's going to be the kind of thing that they can use. Now, this is really
Right. And
good.
if you do that, you want to set that expectation up front. Like you want to go, hey, like communicate clearly up front why you're different. Hey,
Hmm.
we're like the cool teacher, and like, but that can be a good differentiator and a good point of view, and then you can figure out how to layer in the more
Hmm.
casual conversational tone with like science or other educational things and add value. And so it's like you don't have to just conform. I think
Yep.
generally like starting with a kind of what people expect is good, and then try testing like different things and try differentiating and see if people like it. Also, ad copy can be an
Hmm.
amazing way to figure out if people resonate with a different tone without actually changing your product first. And then if you see if specific ads or specific copy people respond to, you can then use that as a signal that you have opportunity here to maybe differentiate a little more.
Hmm. Interesting. Your screen decided to shrink, but we're back now. Kind of back. No? Maybe back. Okay, we're back now. So that makes a lot of sense. And you said something very interesting before. You said that was a Flow or Noom who have an actual quiz as part of their onboarding, which is a tactic I don't see often. Are there any other techniques like this that you have seen or would recommend for developers to try to get that engagement and get that sort of time investment in that are not too frictionful?
Yeah, I like the question and answer format. Um, hey, are you having an issue? Great, we solved that issue. And so that's it may not seem like tons of value, but
Recording in progress.
simply letting users know that they're in the right place, is actually adding value for them because just because they've downloaded your app, they're not sure that it's right for them. They're still evaluating. There's still that valuation decision-making process. So when you can ask questions about what they're trying to solve and then follow up with how you solve those problems, that's valuable. I think that, just adding testimonials, social proof sprinkled throughout is great as well. Um, you want to balance the number of questions you ask. And so you can think of questions as taking and non-question screens as giving back. So balance out your taking versus giving. I think that the psyched model by Darius Contractor. I think I might be pronouncing his first name wrong, but Google the psyched model, and it's a really good framework for thinking about how your users are responding emotionally to your product and to the experience. And so whether you're adding emotional energy or taking away emotional energy, so things like for example, things like permission opt-ins, asking for push opt-in, account creation, asking for email, asking for location, asking for other things. Those are clearly taking from people go, "Ugh, to give this to you. Okay, I've got to enter my account. Okay, enter my email." And so there you want to think about how you build up the excitement or motivation right before those screens. And so if a simple tactic is adding social proof or adding a testimonial or trying to sell your product or motivate users a little more before you ask for push permissions. And then space out asking for different permissions because that allows for you to build back up a user's energy level and kind of excitement and motivation before you take it a little bit away. And so that increases the chances of them continuing through the flow and you getting the information you want. Um, I think like really the question answer format should be like is a good foundation to start with. It allows users to feel heard. A good tactic on the kind of asking about users' goals is a lot of people ask about what's your goal for the product. Not as many apps follow up with that, and so I think you can. It's a super easy personalization that just follows up on that goal question to ask them to dig in a little more. And so this is, what's your goal? To reduce my stress. Okay, what's causing you stress in your life? Work is causing me stress, or relationships are causing me stress. And so this makes the user feel more heard, makes them think your app can solve the problem. A lot of apps, the trick here is a lot of apps don't actually do anything with its information afterwards, but it feels more personalized. So do better than most. Actually use that information later on in your product, or in your marketing or messaging somewhere. But it also gives you that super valuable information for personalization later on that you wouldn't normally have, that you can then follow up with in an email and say, hey, try our work focused content to reduce your stress, because you already know what they're actually interested in versus just a broad topic.
A bunch of really good stuff here. So you said two really big things that I think if we're going to clip this later and make shorts out of it, we have to focus on. So on the one side, give value, meaning everything you do, make it for the user. I really like the idea of an interactive onboarding. I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of, especially because of LLMs, because of ChatGPT, because of how easy that would be. And whoever takes advantage of that first is probably going to set the trend in how that's going to happen. I kind of like that idea. You don't really need to use an LLM though for this. All this can be kind of hard coded with a bunch of ifs. So the value there is just you thinking about what the user wants. And that's a really big thing, because if you think about what your user wants, then you get to know your users, the different kinds of users, and now you can build your app for them too, not just the onboarding. So it's kind of a win-win. But you also said something else about the give and take, and I think that's super important. I noticed in my experience that a lot of the more functional apps that I use will pop up all the things immediately as I open it for the first time, and it's incredibly annoying. And generally, I will only say, I will either say no to all of those until I know what they're for, or I'll say yes if I know exactly what it's for because I need it. Like if I download a remote control app for my TV because I lost my remote control, true story, then I kind of get that they need some permissions. But for the most part, that doesn't happen often. And so that's kind of terrible. And now that's a very extreme and very obvious example, but I love your way of saying give a little bit and then ask, because I think that's how you win. I saw something interesting that I wrote about in an article a while back. A gaming company, wanted to incentivize users to give them ratings because ratings are currency for App Store optimization. And the thing is, Apple does not allow for that to happen. So you can't say, if you give me a 5-star rating, I will give you 100 stars in the app, or 100 coins or something like that. But what they did was different. They gave the users 100 stars and said, oh, would you like to rate us a second later? And those ratings, one, were higher than without any sort of pre-incentive, but also were more 5 stars than anything else. So you're kind of doing the same thing with the onboarding, and making a user feel good in the onboarding is kind of a win for all. So there's another question from the audience that I think aligns right here. Let me find it. Inez is asking, I'm wondering if should we indicate to the user the length of an onboarding progress bar with a progress bar or not? How does that fit in
Yes.
with making it easier for the user to know what's going on?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, easy.
But think about why, right?
Hmm.
Because you're providing more transparency.
Hmm.
You're letting users know how long it's going to take. You letting users know there's an end.
Hmm.
They see progress as they go. They go, okay, great, I'm making progress. They see what's going on. I think that if you have a long onboarding, you can also let users know when they're starting a new section. I think
Okay, I like that.
Headway does this well in their top progress bar.
Hmm.
I forget if they have actual progress, but they show you what kind of section of onboarding you're on. Okay, here's your personal information. Here's your this information, and so you kind of know. Okay, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and
Hmm.
so you see this progress. But like when you have a really long onboarding, sometimes it looks like the progress bar isn't moving at all if it's actually too transparent of exactly the stage you're on. And
Mm.
so there's ways to get creative to show progress. And so your goal with the progress bar is to show progress. And so
Yeah.
if you're you can get creative with exactly how you do that. And I think yeah, I like Headways is a little complicated, but I like the creativity of how they kind of do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think generally the idea of progress does work with what we just said. We talked about how we want to make it easy. It's all about the user, and if the user is blindly going into a 60-page or 60-screen sort of onboarding, that's not at all fun for the user. So I really like this. If you tweak it enough, just so the user can see where they are in the process, but not necessarily exactly down to the view, especially if you're doing testing or if you're doing anything that could change that view or could change the number of views, you really you don't want to do that. Very, very interesting. So continuing on this trend of things that you should do with your onboarding, another question from the audience that we have here is, should you continue with the onboarding past the first interaction? Meaning right after they join, maybe they ran their first session in a health and fitness app, they did something, and then when they open the app for the second time, you still show them something that is a little bit more hand-holdy in a way. Does that make sense? Is that a part of the onboarding, or should that just be a thing all apps do?
Yeah, I think a common mistake is that people think onboarding ends um, after the paywall. You have your onboarding flow, you have your screens, and onboarding's over. Well, no, it's not. Um, onboarding, I like the definition of like onboarding is the process of getting users to understand the value of your product. And so that the question is really, have they understood the value and do they have they gotten to that kind of activation or aha moment yet? If not, no, they're still you still need to onboard them more. You still need to teach them, guide them, educate them. If maybe you have a really cool onboarding, maybe you incorporate kind of some of the core functionality. Like I was looking at a journaling app. They had like the journaling experience as part of onboarding. You did it, you made a journal entry, you saw the whole thing. And like I still think onboarding should continue, but at that point, like you actually do really understand the value of the product. You use the core functionality, and then the paywall shows. So I think in that case, like your onboarding may really be that uh, um, those screens before the paywall. But in most cases, you want to continue something after the paywall because well, one, um, most apps have huge drop-off rates after the paywall. Even if you're a free app, even if you have tons of free functionality, people go, "Ugh, I don't want to pay," and leave. And so what? So you don't have a chance for the users who leave um, at the paywall, but a lot of users will see the paywall, close the paywall, and give you another few screen, give you a chance to kind of captivate them for another few screens. And so actually right after that paywall is a super critical point to keep people engaged. Um, and for people that don't pay, but also for people who pay, because those are the people you want to stick around and you need to retain, and you need to convert on the trials. And so, yeah, you really want to continue things. I think dropping users on the homepage of your app is a terrible experience right after the paywall, which a lot of apps do. Um, Look at your home screen. Is there tons of stuff going on? Is it complex? Is there so many options? Is there tons of different content pieces or tons of different features they can use, tons of different places they can go? Well, then that's going to be a bad experience because they don't know anything about your product. They don't understand things yet, and it's just overwhelming. And so I think a good tactic is to have either a super simplified homepage for new users that has kind of guidance integrated, or continue a more guided flow after that paywall to get them to the exact features you want them to use. You want to figure out what what features. Maybe you only have one feature, but a lot of apps have different pieces of content, different things people can do. Not all of them are equal. There are going to be some that are better earlier on. There are some that be better later on. There's some that are just better overall and are going to retain people better. And so when we think about it that way, clearly we want to get those users to those better features first. Now, you could also think about it, can I ask questions early on that personalize the experience and I can guide people to the features they asked about? That sometimes works, but often there's just one part of your app that's more engaging, better for new people to understand the value, and that's where you want to direct almost everybody first so they really understand that value. And so, long story short, onboarding doesn't end after the paywall.
I think that's a very valid point. Again, so much good stuff in here. So one of the things you said was that ultimately you want the paywall to convert a user, or you want to get the user to take some sort of action. Depends on what your KPI is for measuring engagement. And so you have to think about what is engagement for your app. Is engagement in a fitness app putting in my way to maybe tracking the first day or connecting to my watch or something like that? And so once you get once the onboarding does that, then you know you've succeeded. And maybe an interesting way to measure that would be how long does it take to get to that? We'll talk about measuring in a minute, but that's not necessarily the first experience. That could be the second or third, or I don't know, in some cases, maybe even more. But even beyond that, I think looking at the onboarding as a way to direct people and guide people, not specifically so that they can give you money, because I think that's what a lot of people are thinking about today. The onboarding needs to end with a paywall that will get them to pay me. Great. But with a subscription business, you have to keep them engaged, otherwise they will leave you. So you made your first month's fee, but that's pretty much it. And so dropping them off after an amazing onboarding into an app that doesn't guide them at all is kind of a mistake, and you're not going to retain them. They're going to churn eventually, unless the app is very, very simple. But if the app is very, very simple, then you don't really have a homepage, you only have the feature page. So that makes sense. So another good tidbit here is if your app offers multiple things, either you guide the user to the thing that they want exactly because you asked them, if you listen to us. But if you don't do that, they're probably going to get lost. Man, so much good stuff in here. We have another question from the audience that I didn't have on my list of questions, so I figured we have to bring it on the screen. Leonardo is asking, any insights on apps made for kids? This is the second question we had about kids in the chat. How should we handle potentially very different onboarding personas, adults versus kids? And he also mentioned that they introduced a 1.5-minute video, but they suspect that it's not really working well, an onboarding video. That sounds awfully long to me, but what do you think about this, kids versus adults integrating video?
Yeah, video can be a great strategy if done well. 1.5 minutes is probably long. People are probably going to
Yeah.
watch it all. Can you split it up and
Hmm.
show it like first 10 seconds and then have something else and show a little more because you've probably spent a lot of money creating that great content. And so, there's probably still things you could repurpose or try and use other places. If you have both kids and adults coming into your app, um, it's a tricky place to be. And really, don't even bother trying to monetize the kids. Like it's your only hope is to somehow get adults into the app with the kids. At that point, really, if you look at all the apps that make money that are focused on kids, and there's probably some exceptions, so don't yell at me, but there's all the apps that make money are targeted towards adults, uh, and their kids come in. The kids, they're learning apps. The adult parents discover them and then give them to their kids, and then give the apps to their kids on their iPads or on phone time. And so I've worked with a few kids apps, and that's really like I've talked to other people that have that had like tons of cheap kids traffic coming in, and these ads are performing really well, and it's like, oh, these ads are so cheap because they're bringing the kids are coming into these ads. It's like, well, yeah, maybe the install is cheap, but like none of them are converting, and so it's really not. It's really actually very expensive when you tie it back to the conversion. And so, one, don't get caught in that trick of thinking that you're getting really cheap traffic because if they're kids, and because they're never going to pay because they can't, right? And so there are certain age ranges that are just really hard. Um, like if on basically like once someone's in maybe like above 10, I think it's going to be really hard to really if that's the audience you're targeting at, getting kids to download your product and actually pay for it is really tough. Of course, there's like because you look what you're competing with. You're competing with like Roblox and like Minecraft and like are you going to create a more fun product and a more fun game than those? Probably not. And so that a long-winded answer, but like an easy way to do this is just split early on. Ask if they're a child or a parent, and create a monetization focused flow if they're a parent, and if they're a child, just make it fun, and then try to figure out like you can do things like get your parents' email to unlock certain features of the app, and if if you get their parents' email, then you can try to monetize by reaching out to them. But you need the parents involved in some way or another to eventually kind of have a business there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for kids. Anything that has to do with kids, you can't really target the kids, so why even try? Really go for whoever is really going to do it. Leonardo added that their main audience are kids 4 to 6 years, so I imagine there's really no selling to the kids, always sell to the adults. I don't even know if a
Yeah.
4-year-old wants or will notice an onboarding. I'm sure they will, and I'm sure there is some value in that if it's maybe not an onboarding that's meant to get them to pay, but maybe an onboarding that's meant to get them to use the app, whether it's a learning app or a game, or really anything that a 5 or 6-year-old would actually want. But for paying purposes, just the parents. And I did like the
Yeah.
idea of splitting up the video. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if there is this big investment into a piece of content. And that reminds me that we're always investing into our content. So if you like what you're seeing, drop a like below the video and let us know that you like it. Let Jacob know that you like all of his amazing tips that could make you more money and that I'm helping along the way. I have to do that promotion. That's what I do. And that's what
Love
everyone
it.
should do. That's why we do App Store optimization. And if you're not, that's a different live stream for later. But continuing on with my questions, and there are more questions in the chat that I will try to get to. But one of the things that I'm always thinking about is we talked about potential common threads for failure with an onboarding, and you said boring onboarding is not a good thing. The opposite. Do you see any threads of things that you should be doing, and apps that do them usually get more engagement and more benefit, other than what we've talked about so far?
Yeah. Set context early for why you're asking questions.
Okay,
Um,
I like that.
it can be as simple as, hey, we're asking these questions to personalize your experience. Like you go, okay, great. I'm comfortable sharing information.
Hmm.
People, I think, Flow does a great job of upfront reassuring you of their security protocols and security standards. And so they also let you know they're asking this information to personalize your experience. So it makes you feel safe to share these details. And so if you're think about your product and think about what type of questions you're asking. If you're asking sensitive questions, you need to do more reassurance to users. This can be as simple as um, if you're asking someone about their weight, uh, be positive about it. If you're a weight loss or a fitness app, like probably people aren't in a great mindset. Um, they don't probably feel always so positive about themselves. So if you can make them feel positive and not pile on, that's a good thing. I think that I tactic I really like is when you ask a question, when you have like a multi-choice a question that when you tap on that question or you tap on the answer to the question, uh, if it's a sensitive question or really for a lot of questions, you can pop up a little dialog box that uh, talks about the value in your app connected to that answer. And so, you can say things like, let's go back to like our talking about asking about stress. Like, why are you using this app? I'm more stressed. Um, okay, why are you stressed? I'm stressed because of work. Great. We have 7 meditations specifically focused on workplace stress, or we have a library of stress meditations to help relieve you. And so in that moment, just as a little pop-up or a little bubble under that question, you can reaffirm and reinforce the value you have. You can also do that on the following screen to follow up and to personalize more. But I think I really like that flow. Yeah, what else? I think any opportunity to reinforce that this product is right for them is great. So a lot of apps ask a user's age. Um, so people don't like giving their age, people don't like giving information away in general. But what if you can then follow up on the next screen and say, thank you for sharing. We have 50,000 users your age that love this product. So what does that do? One, it makes you feel better about sharing your age, but it also reinforces that this product is right for them. And you go, well, if other people my age are using it, perfect. You could also do that, similar things with the goals question. Great, we have 100,000 people that use our app to help fight stress, so I think that's a great one. Okay, my favorite one which because it's counterintuitive, but um, I'm sure everybody's seen or a lot of people have seen all of the kind of advice on like push priming and push permissions and like, yes, you want to educate your users that why you're asking for push notifications and blah 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 and only then show the prompt. Well, I found that actually just showing the push prompt immediately on first app open gets a way better opt-in rate a lot. So if you have so a quick if you have 40 to 50% or above with your current push opt-in rate, you're probably fine. If you have below that and you've tried different tactics and they're not working, show the push prompt immediately upon app open on first app open. I someone just shared with me that they saw a 250% increase in opt-in rate from doing this. I don't know what their opt-in rate was before, but that's still big. So I've done this multiple times, and it often has a huge result.
And when you do something like that, do you do zero priming, meaning you just pop it open, or is there anything? So nothing, absolutely nothing. Oh
Just
wow.
show it.
I guess it
People
makes
just
sense.
tap next. People just tap allow. People don't think. People by calling out the notification, by calling out the opt-in prompt, people are thinking about it more. They go, do I want to do this? Is there really value in this for me? But when you show it immediately, people just want to get into the experience and click allow.
Mm.
People don't read as so we talked all about this onboarding flow. Unfortunately, not, a lot of people just don't read anything you put out there and are just going to
Hmm.
tap next. And so you do the best you can, but like a lot of people just are just next, 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 allow whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And people read a lot less than you think they do.
And I think it goes back to the functional versus emotional decision. So even with the emotional decisions, they still want to get to something functional at the end. If you want to do any sort of fitness or weight tracking or anything like that, you still want to get the feature, whether it's a set of how to lift weights or something that will track your weight, connect to a scale, do whatever we need, whatever the app does. So that makes a lot of sense. And there was another question in the chat that I didn't think was that relevant, but actually does is relevant now. Someone asked if it makes any difference between showing branded assets, or showing, what was the question specifically? Let me find it again. And I lost my mouse, which I know would do. But taking just images from the internet, stock photography versus branded assets and illustrations, does that make any difference? Because in my mind, probably not. But what do you think? While I find my mouse.
Um, Probably. I mean, I think that it um, depends on whether the images make sense.
Of course, yeah.
Uh,
Within
I
reason.
think like, do they like they all align? Do they have a similar feel?
Mm-hmm.
I think that your there's a subconscious perception of quality that
Mm-hmm.
people evaluate. I think that design principles, design standards, consistency of design, quality of design actually does make a big difference in perception of quality
Mm-hmm.
and whether someone will purchase or start a trial or not. It's not a conscious thing always, but consumers have really high expectations of products. Consumer expectations are only increasing. And so if you have a question of whether um, your design is of quality enough, it's probably not. And so if you're questioning whether this is good enough, it's not good enough. If you have that doubt in your mind, it's just like a simple it's a simple heuristic. And so really quality of design and quality of the experience really does matter. And people don't think about it, but they go, this just feels like shit. I'm not going to
Yep.
buy it.
And it might be even more subconscious for most people who are not looking at specific design elements or interactions or choppy animations or colors that don't align or colors that are too intense. This is something we talk about here at App Figures all the time because between me and my co-founder, who happens to be my brother, we are both into that, into understanding why an experience is not good so we can make it better. And most people that we talk to about this will say, "Oh, I didn't even realize that this is happening or the animation is not flowing well, and that's why I didn't like I felt like I didn't like it, but I didn't know why." So yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
And I think however way you can achieve that level of design, whether it's stock photography or custom illustrations or a combination, as long as that's the case, to me that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's often easier to have stock photography that doesn't look as good.
Yeah,
So
that's all
it's,
also true. And
yeah,
also it
yeah,
doesn't fit
yeah,
visually. Different lighting,
yeah,
different feels to them.
yeah.
So as long as you make it good. Now, I we have more questions in the chat, but we're running out of time, and I want to summarize what we've talked about so far because there's a bunch of good stuff, but also the highlights to me are really we started with saying always show your paywall, but we really talked about how we can make a better onboarding. The strategies for making a better onboarding is really the same strategies there are to making a better app. Know your user, and you can look at the competition and see how they know their users and what they use to do that. But you can also know your own users and use all the things you know to provide them value immediately upfront as much as possible because the more you do that, the more likely they are to continue using the app. And that's really what we're aiming for with the onboarding, something that we talked about before. It's not just to get them through that first experience and then you're done. Drop them into the app proper and move on with life. It's more about getting them to the point where they're making use of the app and the app is actually useful to them. And it kind of sounds like that's how you win.
That's how you start to win.
That's how you
Yeah.
start to win because then you have to
Yeah.
optimize. For that, you
You
have
have to
to
have a
join
good
us for,
product and
yeah. For that, the viewers would have to join us for part 2 of this, where we talk about the other side of winning. I just invented this live stream for the future, so we'll do what we can.
perfect.
That's pretty much my wrap up. Is there anything you want to add to this before we end this?
If you at all liked anything I had to say, go check out retention.blog. I have a lot of specific, tangible examples of everything I talked about there. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
And I can second this. I've been, again, reading the blog. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there. And that stuff that talks about the onboarding stuff, talks about engagement, stuff that talks about making money once you get people into your app. And again, that's one of the biggest the biggest trends that are happening right now, fewer downloads, more revenue. If you're reading my newsletter, you know that that's the case. If you get a download, make the most out of it. And that's how. Jacob, thank you very much for joining us today and for all the wisdom. I have so many other questions that we didn't get to, like email marketing and can we use emails to engage people as part of the onboarding, but that will have to wait for later. So hopefully there will be a later. But thank you again for joining us. This has been a pleasure. If our viewers want to find you, what's the easiest way to find you online? Retention.blog. Is there anything else?
Yeah, retention.blog, LinkedIn, Jacob Rushfin. If you have any questions, shoot me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message. Usually relatively responsive if it's a good question. Or comment, yeah, comment on one of my posts or on retention.blog. If you comment on my post on retention.blog, I will follow up with you because I have less comments there. So I like those.
Go read the blog, interact, engage. We'll drop links to all the things that we talked about today, the guides, and also Jacob's blog and LinkedIn profile into the description right after this video is done. Thank you very much for joining us all. We're going to be doing this again in a few weeks, so stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter to know when we're doing this again. Take care, everyone. See you later, Jacob.